Hey guys, Kinoflex here, back with another response video. In today's response, I'm going to be addressing a video by Ant, a video essayist who's known for having a bone to pick with a number of critics he sees as liars and grifters. One of such critics is Literature Devil, who was included in a response video from Ant around a year ago that he has only now recently responded to. Ant saw his response video and quickly made one of his own, so here I am weighing into this drama myself with a video of my own. So let's just hop right into the video.
Earlier this week, a new video dropped calling me a quote-unquote lying art bro. That sounds like bait, and personally, I couldn't resist grabbing hold of it with both hands and chomping down that bait. Now, who made this video? Well, it's a guy named Literature Devil, a media criticism channel roughly my current size, responding to a vid I put out over a year ago that everyone has responded to, including myself. My YouTube critics are lying to you video. It's a video I put together over the course of a few days, and so naturally Literature Devil, in order to respond back to it, spent a year and a half figuring out the proper response. I probably should spend a year and a half planning my response, but instead I'm listening to this on the toilet and decided to crap something out instead.
I don't get why Ant has such undeserved arrogance here. If your response to someone who put in significant time and effort into criticizing you is to put out a rushed video, it gives off the impression of someone desperate.
Literature Devil does a lot of things here that I think weaken his argument against me, and as someone who wants good criticism, I'm gonna point out what he does wrong so other people can do it better next time.
Ant says that he made this video to explain to people what good criticism is so that people can respond better to him next time, and yet he made fun of Literature Devil for responding to a video from him that was from a year ago. I don't know, man. Not really buying it.
Here I am framed as someone who understands technical details as a form of social currency, but I know nothing about the craft of creating art. Now, this is of course unlike Literature Devil, who repeatedly shills his book to prove he does know how to create art. Just ignore the AI book cover art that indicates that at least parts of the book were generated by a machine. I'm sure the rest of it he wrote, for sure, absolutely.
Now he's accusing Literature Devil of using AI for his book cover to then conclude that he used AI to write parts of his novel, despite the fact that the art for his book was created by an actual artist who has the same exact sentiments towards AI as Ant. So Ant just flat out lied to his audience here and proves the premise of Literature Devil's video correct of him being a liar in under 5 minutes.
I actually have no idea. I'm not going to read his book.
Since Ant, of course, didn't bother to verify any of his accusations, he attempts to use the infamous Schrodinger's donkey tactic, where he masks criticism as a joke. I still called him out on this on Twitter, where he said that it's irrelevant since Literature Devil still used AI to promote his book, and while that is something Literature Devil actually did, Ant was still clearly talking about the book cover and not the promotional material in this part of the video. But since he failed, he's now backtracking to just saying that since he used AI at all, at any point, then whatever he has to say on the subject of art should be considered inconsequential. I don't care how anti-AI no matter the circumstance someone is. There's clearly a difference in using AI to write or draw your story for you, and using AI to advertise the work you made yourself by hand or using an AI stock image to quickly illustrate a point. You can say that the person is uncreative in how they try to get people to read their work, but using that as evidence to say that someone is a bad writer or artist when it doesn't have anything to do with either of those things is a poor foundation to establish your argument. With that being said, let's move on to his criticism of Literature Devil using AI for the promotion of his book.
Throughout the video, Literature Devil uses AI art to demonstrate his points as stock footage, and look, I'm not going to say, necessarily, no, you know what, I am going to say it. I really don't think it's a good idea to compare yourself to a chef who prides himself on handcrafted hard work on every single intricate detail of the project when you're taking shortcuts like using a computer to generate artwork that uses assets created by other artists and just claiming it as your own. I don't know, something about that seems very much unlike the chef from the menu.
Literature Devil is not claiming to be exactly like Chef Slowick, because to my knowledge, he's not planning on trapping and murdering a group of elites anytime soon. But he uses the comparison as a framing device for his video to communicate the ongoing struggle with artists working to self-improve and be acknowledged only for their work to be quickly consumed without any thought and quickly forgotten.
Slowick obviously represents the toiling, tortured artist yearning to see his work not just consumed, but tasted, savored, appreciated. Slowick had lost his soul striving to feed people who'd hunger only for spectacle without a moment's appreciation for his craft, his pain, or his sacrifice.
While someone like Tyler can at first glance be considered different from all the other rich snobs because he acts as though he understands the process and struggles artists go through, that of course is a facade he uses to hide the fact that he's simply a clout chaser who is no different from the people he attempts to differentiate himself from. This is why Ant's response is actually pretty comical when you think about it, because instead of disproving the comparison made between himself and Tyler, he only solidifies it further by refusing to engage with Literature Devil's work by calling it bad without even having read a single page of it. In short, exactly the sort of thing Literature Devil was outlining as criteria for someone to be an art bro, which Ant conveniently cut out.
Tyler is a pretender. He still sits with the Eaters. Tyler obsesses over the beauty and the philosophy of Slavic's work, the end results, but never the mundane minutiae that forges a novice into a master. Never the sacrifices, the long hours of repetitive practice, or the mess he made of his life, sharpening his skills to razor perfection. In short, Tyler loved the art, but not the craft. This is why he can appreciate the themes of Slavic's work, but also why Tyler can't cook. He feels that if his palate is refined enough, he'd elevate himself to Chef Slavic's intellectual level without knowing the pain of the artist's struggle. The little technicalities that may not concern the eater, but is everything to the artist. In short, the art bro believes himself to be the superior intellectual, not in spite of, but because they dismiss half of reality. He will swoon over the philosophy, covet its beauty, and probably cry that it took me around 10 minutes to get here, but then belittle what I call the work. In the words of award-winning writer and essayist Robert Bly, no giant is going to come along and suck out all the water for you. That magic stuff is not going to help, and a weekend at Esalen won't do it. Acid or cocaine won't do it. The man has to do it, bucket by bucket. This resembles the slow discipline of art. It's the work that Rembrandt did, that Picasso and Yeats and Rilke and Bach did. Bucket work implies much more discipline than most men realize. The work to me is not only the hours and hours of learning and practice, it's the writing, the structuring, the editing, and it's the rewriting. Every foundational element that grants meaning to the meaningless. A process I was intimately familiar with when writing my latest occult detective comic, Lady Midnight, Devils Dwell in Silent Springs.
It exposes Ant's very own facade of presenting himself as someone who respects artists and the process they go through to make their art, because he at the same time disregards all of the work and effort Literature Devil and his artist Nick Axe put into the book for petty personal reasons. If this was an intentional move on Literature Devil's part where he used his book promotion as bait to further expose Ant's own lack of standards as a critic, then I have to say that this was extremely well played.
In short, the art bro believes himself to be the superior intellectual, not in spite of, but because they dismiss half of reality.
This part I find pretty funny because I recently made a video about Mahler where I said that objective criticism is actually not that terrible, and Mahler has a lot of good points. I just don't like his attitude, which is really funny. He's trying to argue. I don't argue that objective criticism is a thing that exists when I did, a couple months ago. This is what happens when you wait a year and a half to make a response, dude.
Okay, but was that naughty point you made in your original video? Because if so, then it doesn't really matter if you said that you no longer have that stance in a later video, because he can still respond to this video in isolation. You saying that you no longer hold a belief that was a core premise of that video only further justifies making a response to it, since even you now recognize your own video as flawed.
So after a quote from Neil Gaiman in 2025, interesting choice.
So this is a weird point of criticism because Gaiman was cancelled for sexual misconduct, not for being a bad writer. You're allowed to separate the art from the artist, as well as valuable insights on what they have to say on the subject as an author without being accused of trying to downplay their alleged criminal actions, which Literature Devil never does at any point. And despite his pearl clutching over this, Ant, on the other hand, initially defended Neil Gaiman when the accusations against him started flooding in, so the lack of self-awareness from him here is hilarious. Don't throw stones from a glass house, buddy.
His first argument is that I didn't show enough of his video in my initial vid.
Which brings us here.
Bad media criticism is a term that's thrown around a lot.
Dishonest storytelling uses narrative elements in far more petty and biased ways. Taking one's limited perspective and writing it as the entire truth is dishonest.
First of all, this was intended to be a judgment on writing, not a judgment on media criticism.
And yeah, that's true. my video isn't about his vid, first off, but yeah, there were a lot of cases where clips just weren't extensively shown. That's one issue I have with that video in hindsight. You see, when I first started out, I was worried about showing too many clips from other channels. Either that the audience might get bored of it, it might kind of become a crutch I rely on rather than present my own opinion, or, the most likely threat, I was afraid that it might incur some copyright infringement response. You know, that a critic I criticize might respond with a copyright strike against my channel. And naturally, outside of streams where I watched whole videos wholesale, I avoided using clips from other videos in my uploaded videos. But then Lily Orchard sent 5 copyright strikes against my channel after I made fun of her a little bit.
You should mass report them, honestly. Mass report them, fuck them. A lot of these people are filthy fucking weebs. Doesn't matter what you doesn't matter what you report it for. Report it for anything. Explicit content could be anything. These people are not normal. These people are fucking psychopaths. If Ant, Sai, and you sit down to talk it out, would you? I would only sit down to talk things out with Ant and Sai if it's in person, and if it's in person, the door is locked, and I'm handed a bat. Yeah, YouTube goes to great lengths to protect abusers. What are you gonna do? Cancel me more?
And after that, I stopped giving a shit.
Here, Ant seems to have a mental breakdown of sorts because he does acknowledge that he took Literature Devil and other content creators out of context before proceeding to make straw men out of their positions. But instead of just acknowledging that he fucked up, he copes by saying that he doesn't care.
The other motive is, you know, LitDev talks a lot, but he doesn't really say anything. And I say as much in the original video. He doesn't really say a lot of meaningful things anyway, at least what I was caring about. He has a lot of what-ifs and speculation and says, oh, this could be this, so what if it was like this instead? Which, that's all well and good, but I don't care about any of that. I care about direct discussion of the topic. So, when I cut a lot of what you say there, Lit Devil, it's not because... No, it's entirely because I don't care what you have to say. I want to get to the point. I want to get right to the ideas that we're talking about. I don't like bullshitting, I like to get right down to the brass tacks of it all.
Then he complains when Literature Devil explains the full context of what he actually said in his original video, only to proceed by once again cutting up what he said into out-of-context clips where you have no idea what he's talking about.
And you repeat yourself so many times in this video too.
Notable author, fellow longtime social justice activist, and writer for both Captain America and Black Panther, Ta-Nehisi Coates once said, when you're writing any sort of fiction, you should be telling the truth as you see it. And I don't know how you do that without commenting on the broader society. You should be telling the truth as you see it, rather than the truth. See, the truth as you see it isn't the truth at all. It's merely your perspective and not the full story.
The truth as you see it was the concept I'd been commenting on, because it isn't the truth. The truth as you see it is just another way of saying your perspective. Of course, your perspective has been warped into your truth to give it authority it doesn't possess.
By the way, this is like the 5th time he's gone in a mantra about the truth in this frickin' video, and we're only 13 or 14 minutes in.
Your points are invalid, Literature Chud, because I'm too lazy to engage with them. Me having a short attention span is entirely your fault.
Because Ant doesn't respect the process and prioritizes taking shortcuts, he ends up missing the big picture of the overall arguments being made. He only cares about the conclusion and not the line of reasoning it took to get there. Which is why Literature Devil explains himself again only for him to completely disregard his explanation again. Nobody is forcing Ant to make response videos to people he doesn't care about on subjects he also doesn't care about. So why even go through the trouble if he's just going to half-ass it? Oh, well, yeah, that explains it. What he does instead of engaging with Literature Devil's reasoning is skip towards the end of his video to talk about how it's unfair for him to say that he sidestepped talking about Lily Orchard's list of criminal conduct and controversies because he criticizes them in other videos of his.
Oh, and by the way, I'm including this early. At the end of this video, Literature Devil implies, no, not implies, outright states that I defended Lily Orchard.
Anthony goes into critique about Lily Orchard, who he first defends by bringing up someone else's dirty laundry. Also, he could justify sidestepping Orchard's own horrific accusations.
Objection!
Yes, that Lily Orchard. The one whose channel I've criticized more than any other channel on my platform.
When it's absolutely a scummy move considering he implied in that video that a number of critics, including Literature Devil, are on the same level as Lily Orchard without substantiating that accusation. And Literature Devil has a a right to be pissed because he is a critic and himself chose to equivocate with Lily Orchard in his thumbnail.
Although I won't conclude my coverage without mentioning the scummiest moment in Anthony's entire video, because I think it summarizes what kind of bad faith critic Anthony actually is.
A lot of you are probably wanting me to go into the personal accusations against Lily, but if we looked into the accusations made about half the grifters we've discussed so far, we'd be here all day.
Anthony goes into a critique about Lily Orchard, who he first defends by bringing up someone else's dirty laundry, all so he could justify sidestepping Orchard's own horrific accusations. Then he brings up 2 cases of legal trouble, one about John Delarose, who only appeared once in the video covering Fandom Pulse, and then Nick Rekieta, who doesn't appear in the video at all. These cases range from domestic abuse, child neglect, and criminal drug possession. These 2 are barely touched on, yet Anthony insinuates that a good half of us have committed or at least been accused of crimes on a similar level. But here's the thing. The main critic he showcased and slapped onto his thumbnail right next to Lily Orchard is me, which in my opinion is a pretty harsh reaction to me not liking little Star Wars movies. And yet we're the immature man babies?
Since he doesn't bring up Lily Orchard throughout his video later on, I'll close this specific topic by bringing up that he does defend Lily Orchard at times over completely petty shit. This is best displayed back when he implied that June the King's video on Lily Orchard, which also happens to be the most popular video addressing their criminal conduct and controversies, was transphobic because he dead-named Lily Orchard at several points. Now, if you're someone like me who watched June's video, you're probably wondering what the fuck he's talking about, because June never dead names Lily Orchard in his video. What he does is reference Lily Orchard's activities that spans 4 years in full, which includes before they transitioned, which is absolutely necessary because the name they were using at the time during several of the controversies are known for was with their pre-transition identity. This makes Ant's framing of June's video incredibly delusional, as he's trying to paint June as going out of his way of being a dick when he's simply being as objective as possible, and even refers to Lily Orchard by their preferred identity and pronouns when their pre-transition identity no longer becomes relevant. I'm not saying that he's trying to cover up Lily Orchard's various shenanigans, but I am saying that he's an idiot with misplaced priorities that prevents him from seeing the bigger picture, which in turn makes him a useful puppet for people like Lily Orchard, who are going to call June's video transphobic no matter what. And let's say for the sake of argument that June was being a dick towards Lily Orchard by pointing out what they were up to before they transitioned. As Ant likes to say, who cares? It's like some body positivity activists taking it upon themselves to defend Jeffrey Epstein from people making fun of his egg-shaped penis online because that's body shaming.
Is it true, sir, that you have what's been described as an egg-shaped penis?
Is it body shaming? Sure, but it's also fucking Jeffrey Epstein being made fun of. So once again, who cares? How are you helping your cause by picking the worst hills to die on?
There's a reason why Star Wars fans reacted so negatively to The Last Jedi's absolute destruction of heroes and traditional nobility.
Dude, you're like fucking Walter from Big Lebowski, bringing up Vietnam for every single topic. What does Star Wars have to do with anything here? No one gives a shit about Star Wars this much, dude.
Again, just more dishonesty from Ant. He asks what Star Wars has to do with anything and who even cares about Star Wars when his video was responding to Literature Devil's points on Star Wars. Him suddenly not caring anymore is not a valid defense to anything. Either make an argument or just concede the point you made in your original video. Stop with the whining. You're a grown man.
I forgot how often you repeat yourself. You say the same quotes. You quote yourself the same time, multiple times, in a 10-minute period, over and over again. And it's to drill ideas into your audience, sure, basic ideas. And folks conflate you using a lot of big words with you sounding intelligent. But I think concise language is better. It's better to say less but communicate a lot than to waste people's time rambling. It's just not meaningful.
He says this while purposefully avoiding times in Literature Devil's video when he makes it abundantly clear what he's talking about, but leaves out because he can't meaningfully respond to it.
Bad media criticism is a term that's thrown around a lot.
Dishonest storytelling uses narrative elements in far more petty and biased ways. Taking one's limited perspective and writing it as the entire truth is dishonest.
First of all, this was intended to be a judgment on writing, not a judgment on media criticism. Here's this segment with a little more context.
Notable author, fellow longtime social justice activist, and writer for both Captain America and Black Panther, Ta-Nehisi Coates once said, "When you're writing any sort of fiction, you should be telling the truth as you see it. And I don't know how you do that without commenting on the broader society. You should be telling the truth as you see it rather than the truth." See, the truth as you see it isn't the truth at all. It's merely your perspective and not the full story.
The truth as you see it was the concept I'd been commenting on, because it isn't the truth. The truth as you see it is just another way of saying your perspective. Of course, your perspective has been warped into your truth to give it authority it doesn't possess. Ultimately, my critique was against activist writers who dismiss honesty to create stories that heavily favor their side, presenting their biased view as the objective truth, and in such a way that disagreeing would be crazy because you'd be disagreeing with the truth and the good guys. So the iconic American superhero changed from warrior of justice to left-wing activist, and the stories began heavily reflecting left-wing viewpoints. Like here, when Nature Girl went on a murderous rampage over the environment, which the book justified by having the island of Krakoa forgive her. Or like when Ta-Nehisi Coates, the one I'm commenting on in the video, infamously wrote the Nazi Red Skull to a mirror of Jordan Peterson. I could see why Ta-Nehisi Coates is hailed as an intellectual. It takes a pretty high IQ to go, there's this guy I don't like, so I'm gonna make him a Nazi. There's nothing wrong with showing your perspective, but honest storytelling dictates showing the positives and the negatives of both sides, especially if your story's purpose is exploring the conflict between these ideas.
What Lit Devil is saying here makes complete sense, because if you're going to write about contentious political topics or themes that mirror real life, you're doing your story a disservice by actively avoiding the nuances that come with them, just like in real life. What makes Ta-Nehisi Coates comparing Jordan Peterson to the Red Skull so idiotic to downright irresponsible is that he's combining actual Nazi rhetoric about racial superiority with basic conservative talking points like self-responsibility, such as cleaning your room, which is sound advice recommended by psychologists since research shows a cluttered environment negatively affects one's mental well-being. Coates is attempting to use classical conditioning on his readers to frame people he disagrees with on a civil level with those on the radical fringes who use violence as a tactic that requires violence being used against them in turn, which is incredibly deranged for reasons I don't think need explaining.
You even quote Neil Gaiman a second time in 2025.
Yes, Mr. Googoogagamugula. I am well aware of what the current year is, as well as the current week of the current month. That doesn't prevent me from recognizing how you're using the author's scandal to avoid discussing the relevant point being brought up on the importance of honesty when addressing serious topics in fiction, which is what the clip was about.
To again quote Neil Gaiman,
all fiction has to be as honest as you can make it. You have to make it as honest as you can because that's what people respond to. Any success I have achieved because I'm an honest writer of fiction, because my people are real people, because you care about them.
And keep in mind, Ant himself considers Gaiman to be a great writer, which is why he originally defended him from the accusations against him until it became inconvenient to do so.
Anyway, my definition of bad criticism.
and that brings us to Anthony's definition of bad media criticism.
Bad media criticism isn't simply just disagreeing with someone. It's not saying something you don't agree with. It's when the criticism itself seems to fundamentally misinterpret the piece of media being discussed, even when it's supposedly going through a scene frame by frame by frame.
The stated crux of this video and the baseline element as to why we're all liars. I would say simple disagreement is not only allowed, it's also fun. It's the very heart of literary discourse, which I support. The days when media discussion was fun and you didn't get called a Nazi because you didn't like Star Wars, or racist because you thought Black Panther was boring.
But it's odd that you say that specifically. Why are people calling you racist for not liking Black Panther? What arguments are you making about Black Panther? You know what I'm saying? Like, that invites a question that you just don't answer. You kind of move past that point. I mean, I guess he agrees with my point ultimately, so I shouldn't be, like, pushing so much in this, but, like, it's just an odd thing for someone to say, right?
What's weird is to assume that the person being accused of racism for thinking that Black Panther was boring is actually racist, since that's clearly an accusation made in bad faith to avoid confronting the criticisms.
Peach! Yeah. Princess Peach!
Yeah.
Give it her pants!
Yeah. And here Literature Double shows this out-of-context clip I provided of Shad complaining about Princess Peach wearing pants. And of course, this is an error of mine. I should have showed the whole clip, because the whole clip makes him look way, way worse. Because the full clip, which I've referenced multiple times since, does illustrate Shadiversity using bad faith criticism. The following video comes from my video, When Does a YouTube Critic Become a Lying Grifter?, which I think handled this topic way better. However, they will often point to tropes, ideas, concepts, the appearance of certain actors as evidence in lieu of actual concrete evidence. And that's enough for some of their audience. Great example of this? When Shadiversity freaked out over Princess Peach wearing pants in the Mario film.
Oh, Peach, yeah. Princess Peach. Yeah. Giving her pants. Yeah. Friggin' come off of it.
What he doesn't realize is this costume is from Mario Kart. It's a well-established outfit for Peach. Any real fan of Mario would recognize it because they've played Mario Kart. Shadiversity clearly has not. I apologize to Shadiversity for making him look less like a tourist. I promise you, it won't happen again. But anyway, what's Lit Devil's takeaway from all this?
But Shad's right. She is, in fact, wearing pants.
Objection!
Jesus Christ, man.
We'd have to already know that the anti-woke position is to promote femininity in female characters, which means more dresses and fewer power suits. And yes, this is why Peach wearing pants became a talking point, as a pushback against the masculinization of women in modern pop culture.
No, Lit Devil, the femininity topic is not my takeaway for Shad. It's that Shad doesn't know shit about the topic he's talking about. He's getting all angry about something he doesn't know about. That's the takeaway.
Honesty, however, means providing full context, which means noting that Peach's outfit here is actually canon. It's her iconic racing outfit, which she's wearing after the Mario gang's adventure down Rainbow Road. So this wasn't necessarily a woke element of the story, just adherence to lore.
Oh, no, wait, you do know what the topic is. And why it was a point of discussion. So then what was the point in pretending you didn't know what the point was?
But Shad's right. She is, in fact, wearing pants. Now, dishonesty might be me leaving it at that, unironically calling Anthony an idiot and moving on simply because that's how it looks, and it makes my side look better.
Oh, you're just full of shit then. Okay, I see.
Yeah, Shad was being stupid here, but you never made that point in your original video. This was the point Literature Devil was making. If you're honest and show the full context, your points suddenly become much better, which is why it's beneficial to be honest.
He does this a couple more times throughout the video, show a random clip, go on a whole tangent and go in circles, and end up really not disagreeing with me ultimately at all. He just says things to make me sound dumb, but ultimately fails to actually make me sound dumb.
I honestly don't know, man, because you're going out of your way to not really show any of the arguments he made while saying that you don't care.
Benevolent leader of mutants versus Magneto, the malicious leader of mutants. How do I know? Because this structure is perfectly in line with Stanley's writing ethic and his push for universal truths.
While activists will say Marvel has always pushed social justice,
Oh
writing
my
the
God,
truth
who
as they
the
see it,
hell
as we've seen it,
cares?
this is a lie.
Trust me. We know you don't care because you would have to not care to make a video this lazy. But since he's going to completely overlook what Literature Devil said here, I'll summarize it. He's using classic Marvel stories like the X-Men to illustrate honest storytelling, as writers such as Stan Lee and Chris Claremont were less focused on their own personal truths and more so universal truths of doing the right thing no matter who you are. It doesn't matter if the hero was a straight white man or a gay black woman, because if they were of upstanding moral character, they should be able to do the right thing in the end regardless of whatever identity group they're a part of. The point isn't to necessarily critique Ant here like he seems to think, but to again illustrate the importance of honesty when interacting with someone else's work, which is a reoccurring theme throughout the video, which does eventually lead back to Ant and his interactions to other people's work.
And at this point, my emphasis on honest storytelling isn't necessarily a dig at Anthony's points, just yet, but it is a major issue that will remain relevant as we go along.
Honest criticism means actually looking at what they say and not twisting quotes to justify your own ends. As we'll see, despite Lit Devil saying, I do that, he does it constantly.
Honest storytelling, which brings us here.
Chinua Achebe's famous criticisms of Heart of Darkness rewrote academic textbooks for decades and led to the creation of Achebe's counterpart to Hearts of Darkness, Things Fall Apart. But one thing both of these criticisms have in common, they address the themes and ideas of the work. When referencing specifics, it's in order to bolster the argument that the themes are fundamentally wrong.
Remember when I said that a good writer values honesty, and how honest storytelling will remain a relevant topic in this video? Well, this next section is a big reason.
And here's where Lit Devil said something so stupid that when I first started watching this, I actually stopped watching completely. I closed the video and walked away.
Let's start by quoting the excerpt from Achebe's piece since the video doesn't bother to. Heart of Darkness projects the image of Africa as the other world, the antithesis of Europe and therefore of civilization, a place where man's vaunted intelligence and refinement are finally mocked by triumphant bestiality. The book opens on the River Thames, tranquil, resting peacefully at the decline of day after ages of of good service done to the race that peopled its banks. But the actual story will take place on the River Congo, the very antithesis of the Thames. The River Congo is quite decidedly not a river emeritus. It has rendered no service and enjoys old age pension. We are told that going up that river was like traveling back to the earliest beginnings of the world.
First, Literature Devil reads the quote I kept on screen long enough for you to read yourself, because apparently me reading it out loud to you is necessary. Achebe's extensive writings about Hearts of Darkness argue the book is immensely racist towards Native African people, especially those living in the Congo and the surrounding area. Achebe's book tells a tragic story that embraces the rich culture of various African cultures, telling a story of humanity, of characters that Conrad dismissed as savage. And Lit Devil completely fails to get this.
I'm actually surprised that Anthony showed this as a positive example of critique, because towards the end, Achebe says this. In my original conception of this essay, I had thought to conclude it nicely, on an appropriately positive note in which I would suggest, from my privileged position in African and Western cultures, some advantages the West might derive from Africa, once it's rid its mind of old prejudices, and began to look at Africa not through a haze of distortions and cheap mystifications, but quite simply as a continent of people. Not angels, but not rudimentary souls either. Just people. Often highly gifted people and often strikingly successful in their enterprise with life and society. But as I thought more about the stereotype image, about its grip and pervasiveness, about the willful tenacity with which the West holds it to its heart, when I thought about the West's television and cinema and newspapers, about books read in its schools and out of school, of churches preaching to empty pews about the need to send help to the heathen in Africa, I realized that no easy optimism was possible, and there was, in my case, something totally wrong in offering bribes to the West in return for its good opinion of Africa. Ultimately, the abandonment of unwholesome thoughts must be its own and only reward. Although I have used the word willfully a few times here to characterize the West's view of Africa, it may well be that what is happening at this stage is more akin to reflex action than calculated malice, which does not make the situation more, but less helpful.
Let me reiterate Achebe's quote here that he just read. Originally, he was going to appeal to white people and their sensibilities, but then he saw how racist we all are and how ingrained racism was in our society, and decided to speak his honest perspectives, rather than say something nice to sell racists on the ideas he presented. The only option he saw was to violently smash racist stereotypes, rather than hold our hands through the process. He chose a blunt, harsh truth instead of pleasantries. Here's how Lit Devil interprets the quote.
Which does not make the situation more, but less helpful. While chastising Western civilization for its generations-long bias against Africa, his ultimate hope is not to lift Africa as a paradise. He wasn't trying to sell it as Wakanda. He wants Western society to acknowledge the entire picture, the good along with the bad.
No, that's not what Achebe's point was in this quote. The point was that racism is so deeply embedded in America and Europe that he wanted to force us to understand that culture existed there, that people were people, that there was humanity in this place that they dismissed as a shadow dark land, as in Hearts of Darkness. That the stereotypes we had of savagery at that time were based on racist lies and misinformation. It has nothing to do with acknowledging the good and the bad. That's directly what he chose not to do. He chose to break stereotypes, period, full stop. He wasn't acknowledging, oh yeah, there's some bad stuff here, but here's all the good stuff there too. That's what he chose directly not to do.
So for this segment, Ant is just being completely misleading, as he assumes no one in either his or Literature Devil's audience has actually read Chinua Achebe's works, because the racist white people in question aren't simply people like the KKK who hung black people from trees, but people like Ant as well. White liberals whose racism was more subtle and condescending in their stereotypes to the point where they didn't view black people as having any agency whatsoever. What makes Things Fall Apart such a fascinating novel that gets talked about to this day is that it doesn't put all of the blame on the colonists for the poor state of Africa, as it goes into detail the many flaws in African culture that enable their culture to fall apart and be conquered in the first place. For instance, the protagonist of the story kills children and beats his wives because that's what the tradition of his culture tells him to do. which isn't portrayed in a positive light in the story. Achebe even acknowledges that the opportunities that he and various other African cultures had were objectively helped by colonialism despite ultimately being against it. This is the harsh and blunt truth Achebe was talking about. He was always going to criticize colonialism, but nobody expected him to criticize African culture because he demolished false stereotypes of Africans made by progressive academics who had their own pet agendas when piggybacking off of their respective struggles. Something to keep in mind about pro-black groups back then is that they made it very clear that they weren't fans of white liberals hijacking their movements in order to push issues that had nothing to do with them. So when Ant says that he was simply talking about the negative stereotypes that made Africans look bad, that's simply untrue because he was talking about false pictures of Africans in general, which included false expectations being expected from them when they have the same flaws and room for growth as any other culture.
While chastising Western civilization for its generations-long bias against Africa, his ultimate hope is not to lift Africa as a paradise. He wasn't trying to sell it as Wakanda. He wants Western society to acknowledge the entire picture, the good along with the bad. Because
dishonest storytelling uses narrative elements in far more petty and biased ways. Taking one's limited perspective and writing it as the entire truth is dishonest.
in other words, Achebe too values honesty and honest storytelling, a sentiment echoed in Things Fall Apart.
Certainly in the portrait of village life before the Europeans come, you don't paint an idealized vision there. The main character, Okonkwo, is thoughtful but violent.
Yes, I was doing that deliberately. Young as I was, I knew that I wanted the story to be true in the way fiction can be true.
The way fiction can be true.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
In a very profound way. There is, even as you're making up a story, you're making it up, but there's a way you do it, and it tells you something rings in my ear. This is wrong, this is true, this is false. And I wanted to avoid that. I wanted it to be seen in all its grandeur and in all its weakness.
The problem wasn't simply about showing the African people in a negative light, since again, Achebe was no stranger to doing that himself. It was how they were portrayed with a lack of complexity. He wanted something closer to the truth to be told, which is naturally more complicated. Always portraying African society in a strictly positive light is just as bad and harmful as portraying it in an always negative light, which Ant ultimately failed to understand since he's not very bright. Ant getting basic information wrong about an author whose book most people read in high school is embarrassing alone, but it's especially embarrassing that he's bitching and moaning about Literature Devil having the correct takeaway of the author's views, which only exposes his own overall lack of understanding. If Ant ever gets around to responding to this video, anything other than him saying I was wrong is only further evidence of him being a hack pseudo-intellectual. I'm going to end the video here even though we're only halfway through because I think I got my points across regarding Ant's dishonesty. And he's also not engaging with most of the points in Literature Devil's video anyway, since most of the time he's just whining about how much he doesn't care in his video response that's over an hour long. And if you're someone in Ant's audience who's upset by this, keep in mind that he did the exact same thing in his video.
But oh, there's a half hour more of the video to watch. Well, good luck with that, because I don't care. I just don't. He wasted my time enough with the first hour of this video. Why should I care enough about the last half to go through line by line like I did before? He is a time waster, and I have wasted enough time looking at his nonsense.
So I'll entertain Ant's wishes of not wasting people's time, since that's ultimately what his videos are.
Why can't he just counter the argument that Literature Devil is making? Why's he got to do it so dishonestly?
Because YouTube critics are lying to you, Adam.
Well, no, I think
Anthony's one of the biggest liars of them all.
In the end, Anthony can't logically answer anything he takes issue with, not without bad faith argumentation, because he's Tyler, an art bro who can talk the talk, but can't walk the walk. This seems to be why so much context needed to be cut away, and why the clips are oh so carefully edited, and so much of my evidence had to be ignored.
But if you guys are actually interested in wanting me to fully finish my response to this video in a follow-up video, be sure to show this video some support, because otherwise, I'm satisfied editing it here. But hey, those are just my thoughts, and if you have any of your own, feel free to flex them off in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.